I don't think I ever really believed everything.
And I realized that quite a few of the things didn't hold water.
The actual religions were man-made from wherever.
God? Who's God? What's God?
I think skepticism really is the first step.
Scientific zest and zeal for the real world.
That was it. I was an atheist from then on.
The chief executive officer of the world was doing one hell of a lousy job.
Hi, I'm Rad.
Hi, I'm Susan, and we're members of New York City Atheists. Today, we're going to interview our friend Larry on how he came to walk the road to atheism.
Larry, what is your full name?
Lawrence Samuel Shaw,
And
pronounced Larry.
you got it. Okay, Larry.
It's very fancy with Lawrence Samuel Shaw. It's like a writer's name, you know. Well, there's two parts to this question. How I became an atheist, and then how come I joined the New York City Atheists.
Well,
it's a two-part story.
It's going to be more to that.
Yes.
Okay?
And there'll be subdivisions within that.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
And you were born into what kind of family?
Eastern European background Jews. They were
Religious?
No, they weren't religious. They were hypocrites, actually. I'm convinced my parents were atheists, but they were cultural Jews. You know, there's a rich cultural thing about being Jewish. You don't know about
Cafeteria,
that.
like cafeteria,
Whatever.
cafeteria.
You know, it's something. There's a rich culture to it, and Jews are so accomplished that they feel that if they don't renew their Judaism, they'll stop being so educated or something like that. But I know a lot of Jews are not really religious. Like, for example, there was my European grandfather, my Hungarian Jewish grandfather, who was an immigrant. And he used to go to synagogue, and he was an old-style Jewish man. But I'm convinced that he was not religious. Now, how do I know that? One day, my turtle died. So he found out that the turtle died, and he insisted that we give the turtle a Jewish burial. And he had the yarmulke on, and the prayers for the dead, which I still think that was very funny. Now, somebody tells me that if he was really religious, he wouldn't have done that. I mean, you don't give a turtle a Jewish burial. A lot of atheists will tell you that people are naturally atheists, and then they are...
Until they are taught.
Taught. I don't agree with that. I believe that people are by nature religious. It's something in the psychology that makes you think there's a father up there. There's someone that made you. The particular religion that you have, that's what you learn. But you have a sense of religion. And when I was a child, I believed in God. And the God of my childhood was kind of the CEO of the world, the chief executive officer. He didn't have control over everything, but he had some control. So, for example, if I had a lousy day, okay, then God would make sure that the next day had a decent day. Or let's say I wanted to go outside to play ball, and it rains, and I'm upset about that. I have to go inside. But while I'm inside, there's a terrific television program that I watch, or I read a great book. So God was fixing things up. And this is how I saw religion.
Did your parents have any influence?
I don't think so, but I do remember it was at the age of 6, I was explaining to my neighbor's daughter, who was a year younger than me, how God had built up all of the city. I lived in Brooklyn at that time. God made all this, and my mother said, I think people might have had something to do with it. Now, there were two things that put me on the word to atheism. The first one was, at the end of the second grade, I had no interest in reading. I thought school was boring. You know, those Dick and Jane books? I couldn't give a goddamn about Dick and Jane and their dog. Spot, whatever his name was. So my mother used her brains, and she figured that she'd find something to get me to read, and she brought me some dinosaur books. All little boys love dinosaurs, and I have found out, talking to other guys, that the dinosaurs had done more for reading and literacy than anything in history. So that sent me on the road to my intellectual development. I became interested in paleontology, which is not the study of old pails, but the
Yes,
study
yes, we know.
the history of life on Earth and astronomy, and I had the grasping of evolution. And I would beg my father to take me to the Museum of Natural History, and there was this and I liked the Museum of Natural History, and there was that Brontosaurus, which they now call the Apatosaurus. I fell in love with it, and I went to visit him not long ago. He was like an old friend, but he didn't seem as big as it was when I was a little kid. And I was interested in that sort of stuff, and I had an intellectual development, but I still believed in God. The two things that came together was, number one, by learning about the universe. It's made of atoms and electricity, and there's gravity and all sorts of tremendous distances. And the other thing was I saw that the chief executive officer of the world was doing one hell of a lousy job, because I found out that things weren't so fair. I mean, maybe things were sort of okay in my little life, but I knew that 6 million Jews were killed during World War II, plus tens of millions of young soldiers that were killed in the battlefields, and when you were in a city and the bombs fell on your house, you were killed that way, and people were crippled and blind and got cancer and they died young and they had all sorts. God is not. There's no control here. This is chaos. And so I realized intellectually that there ain't no God. And it was about 12 or going on 13. And I've been nervous ever since, because I don't have anybody to protect me. If I'm in trouble, I can't go, "Dear God, please spare me," because there's nobody to listen to you.
That's Freud always says that we're looking for a God figure, and that's where religion really is.
So at 13, you came out, and did you ever have a bar mitzvah? Or?
Oh yeah, I had a bar mitzvah. I loved it. I was really into it. I got in reading the Torah and all that, because I was a bit of a showman to me. It was great. I even had a dream about my bar mitzvah, and I dreamt that after I did the Haftorah, the audience suddenly got up and clapped. They were, "Yay, terrific! Ooh, you're good, you're good."
Encore, huh?
So, and then what I found out is I kept quiet about my atheism. I mean, if somebody asked me, I said, "Oh no, I'm not religious. But I wasn't involved with professional atheists. So to me, back then, if I knew a guy like Ken Bronstein, the president of New York City Atheists, I'd say, "What an annoying jerk of a guy. What's he clamoring about and hacking about religion and so on? Who cares?" So, and then came 9/11. And also my realization that the right-wing movement in America is also a religious movement.
Yes, it is.
Because if you can believe that Reagan was a good president, you could also believe that Jesus died for your sins. It's all the same thing. All religion leads to madness. Now, you take, for example, 9/11. And I was across the street when it happened. Wow. I saw the bodies falling from the sky and all that. It was like being in a movie set. And it was
Only it was reality.
Well, what happened is that while it was happening, and I'm running around and seeing all this, it was like watching an exciting movie. But that night, I got cramps. Just a reaction. I felt it was sickening. And I kept on having the image of the last moments of those people, flying out the window. I mean, what drives you to fly out of a window? I mean, I'm not afraid of height, but yeah, I'm not afraid of height, but I don't like to fall. So to me, that is such a horror. Now, they tell us that was an act of terrorism. Nonsense. It was an act of religious devotion. Terrorism is simply warfare by other means. If you don't have an army. So if, for example, some Palestinian Arabs go over to a remote outpost, a Jewish outpost in the West Bank, and they massacre the family, they're sending a message like, "Hey, you Israeli Jews, don't settle here." It's very horrible, it's ruthless, it's vicious, but it has a logic to it. What was the logic to 9/11? What were they going to accomplish? Did the next day, if the next day after 9/11, suddenly the Baghdad Caliphate was established and bin Laden was its president and Israel ceased to exist, the United States disappeared, then I'd say, yeah, okay, it's logical. This didn't accomplish a damn thing.
So how did that affect you, Larry?
Because I saw the insanity of religion. It just hit me emotionally.
It hit you then?
It just hit me emotionally.
All right.
It was an emotional thing, not anything intellectual.
So
emotion.
that's a milestone.
Yeah, I think it was a milestone.
Okay.
And the thing is, I realize religion always leads to insanity. Now, if somebody will say, wait a second, this is a perversion of Islam. Mm-hmm. And I say, okay, I'll go with that. I could say that the vast majority of Muslims think of that as being a perversion of their religion and it's not Islam. I'll buy that. But what about the fast of Ramadan? For mainstream Muslims, they have a month every year where after breakfast, no nourishment, no water, no food until nightfall. What do you do if you're a farmer in a warm country? How can you do? Either you don't farm your land, you don't do your work during the day, or you endanger your health with heat prostration. Mm-hmm. So that's crazy. Here's another thing. If you're, say, religious Catholic, you're a couple, you have 2 kids. You can't afford more than those 2 kids. You'll be in poverty if you do. The church says no abortion,
That's right.
no birth control. Mm-hmm. So either you're going to put yourself into poverty, or you're going to avoid this intimate, loving interaction, this pleasure. That's crazy.
Well, a lot of Catholics do use birth control.
But they're not being really religious.
No, they're not.
Okay, like I say, if you say to me, I'm religious, I believe in God, and I'm a perfectly normal, functioning person, it's because you're not that religious. Or then, amongst the Jews, they have food that's evil. The kosher laws. This is bad food. Don't eat that. Don't eat that. And it's dirty. It's bad. It's evil.
But more importantly, with you, you dismiss those laws, and
I dismiss it. It's all ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense. Or if amongst the Hindus, they have whole classes of people that have to live like garbage, the lower caste people. You're born that way, and you're going to be treated, and treat you like crap. You have to, and the untouchables, what do they look forward to? Sweeping up garbage.
Couldn't walk on the sidewalk.
Or walking in the sewers.
They have to clean the human animal waste. That's what they're supposed to do for their whole lives, and it says so by the religion. Any religion you have will lead to that kind of craziness.
Different rules, different laws. Some of them are beneficial. Most of them are not necessarily beneficial.
And then there was the association between the right-wing extremism in this country and religiosity. Now, what happened when I joined New York City Atheists? Well,
when did you join?
It was in May of 2011. Mm-hmm. And it was for personal reasons. It was for my own personal psychological reasons. Why not connect with people that share my philosophy?
Right.
So I went on the internet, very modern, and I typed in Atheist New York City, and boom, this thing popped up. And the first meeting I went to, I joined it. And I found that what's interesting to me is it's a very interesting group of people, a very decent, intelligent, sensible group of people. And I've had personal things. I've made friends here. I got involved with a small literary group that has really taught me how to do technical writing. I also find that it's a good cause. Now, it's interesting to me that if you get up and you say, I believe 2,000 years ago, there was a woman, got married, and before she consummated her marriage, she became pregnant with the Son of God. And when this son named Jesus grew up, the father decided that he should be tortured to death, to die for everybody's sins. The whole thing doesn't make sense to me. It's the completely crazy story. Mm-hmm. Because even if you believe in the supernatural, why do you have to, what purpose is it to die for somebody else's sins? It's just like if there's a town and there's a group of kids, a group of young men, and they're committing all kinds of problems. They're raping women, they're burglarizing, throwing stones, they're making damages, they're killing people. Finally, they're round up. They're brought before the judge. And the judge says, I'll tell you what, if you all agree to behave yourselves, I'll let you go. No punishment. But you got to promise never to commit another crime. And they all say, well, we promise. And they say, it's amazing. Nobody gets punished? He says, who says nobody gets punished? My son, one of the utmost citizens in our community, I'm going to put his ass in jail. Did it make any sense?
No.
But if you say that, you can vote. You can run for president.
Mm-hmm. Well, my thing on that,
right. But then if you get up and say, I don't believe in God. I just don't believe in God. I don't believe in a supernatural being. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's ridiculous. I believe there's atoms, there's molecules, electricity, and gravity. I don't see God in this. Yeah. And God doesn't answer prayers. People, and you get the people who believe in God. There's a sort of a mental aberration there. I mean, you take this: all of millions of people who get murdered, die in accidents, earthquakes, storms, starvation, get cancer, birth defects, tortured to death, whatever, wrongly imprisoned. Where's God? Telling me that none of those people were religious and prayed? No God, no intervention. But some guy who's about to begin a football game sits down to pray to God that he should win the game. So God is going to intercede for his football game.
Of course.
Yes.
Now, to me, that's nuts. They say, does God love you? If either God is completely indifferent. He's just, oh, yeah, I don't care. But if God existed and God was active, he would be like a very devilish character. Oh, you got penicillin, so all the kids aren't dying young? Give you heart disease and cancer. Oh, you're getting a cure for heart disease? You're helping the cancer? We'll get you Alzheimer's disease. Mm-hmm. Oh, you know what? I got a new thing. Ebola. So right. It's like, I'm going to hit you with it, And then so you'll ask a religious person, well, there's the devil. Mm-hmm. See, there's this conflict between the devil and God through people.
That's the way they hold the having an excuse. You got to have an alternative. And if God was all so strong, why would he let the devil stay in existence?
But going back to New York City Atheists, we have that street tabling when the weather is nice, of course. Mm-hmm. And you are such a saintly character. You actually debate with these people, and you don't get mad or throw up or anything. So they have it says separation of church and state. Mm-hmm. And people say, well, what do you mean by that? In this country, and this is something I'm getting to by this business about how a person who's an atheist can't run for president. It says we have freedom of religion. We don't have, like in Saudi Arabia, they have an official church. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's the official religion. We say we don't have an official religion. You want to be an Episcopalian? Fine. You want to be a Catholic? It's great. Jew? Fine. Muslim? Not so fine, but we'll accept it. Mm-hmm. Buddhists? Whatever religion you have, but you better believe in God. And that's why on the currency it says, in God we trust. It doesn't say Allah, it doesn't say Christ. Mm-hmm. It says, in God we trust. You have a right to worship God in any way you want.
Mm-hmm. But
you better believe in God.
Well,
and if you don't believe in God, then something's wrong with you.
We still have a problem with education, and I'm sure you know about that, where they want to teach religion along with science. I don't want to learn about flying dragons and talking snakes in a real science class.
Well, I don't think they do that.
That's
what
my
they're
feeling.
trying to do
that's why we're interested in having a total separation of church and state.
What they want to teach is not flying dragons, but they want to teach so-called intelligent design, and I know that my body was not intelligently designed. I know it. It is very stupidly designed. It works somehow. I survive from day to day. But if I were intelligent, I'll give you an example of something, okay?
Being bipedal, obviously we're going to have a problem with our spine.
There's a spinal problem. I always got that. And then the vaginal canal, the birth canal of a human being is designed for a chimpanzee, not for the big swollen head of a baby.
That's right.
That's why women have so much trouble giving birth. Then there's something else. Somebody invites you out. Somebody was telling me they were invited out to go fishing on the ocean. So they go on this boat to go fishing, and the boat is rocking, and they get violently seasick, throwing up, dying from seasickness. All right. Now, what's the purpose of that? There's nothing dangerous about being on a boat rocking back and forth. It's not going to hurt you. Mm-hmm. And some people don't get seasick, but some people do. Now, if we were well designed, nobody would get seasick. Mm-hmm. No one would have allergies.
Right.
Now, think about this. What are people allergic to? Strawberries?
Shellfish.
Peanuts. And of course, and our eyes don't work right. Yeah. I need to have these glasses. If I didn't need glasses, if I had properly designed eyes. And another thing that's it's not a big deal, but it's very annoying. Follicle challenge over there. Yes. Why did I have to lose that? But the hair here is better than ever. And I found that there's hair growing in my ear, which I don't need to have hair to grow there.
You get older,
hair grows out there. I mean, and then what do people like to do? They like to eat. What happens when you like to eat? You get fat. Mm-hmm. Now that shows us we're not made right. We should be able to eat all we want without getting fat. And then, and in the natural order of things, you see, it's quite obvious that we're given certain instincts that help us to survive, like love of children. You see a child, your child, you love your children. It's cute, it's adorable. But in the natural order of things, before modern medicine, the average family would have 6, 7, 8 children, of which only about 3 would live to adulthood. So death of children, and that was horrendous. What people put up, the kind of suffering that parents had. My question is, why do people believe in God? Now, I understand if you come from a primitive society, you don't know any better. Ignorance. But if you come from our society, and even if you come from the Bible Belt of the United States, you live in a modern society with television and radio and movies and all that, you have enough information to tell you there ain't no God. You know it. It's obvious. So if you believe in something despite the evidence, they have a word for that. It starts with a D. Delusion. Now, one of the problems I have of some people in our society, amongst atheists, is they seem to think that all you have to do is teach people how to think rationally. You know, you give them a book on logical thinking, and no. Because if a person believes in God, that's a delusion. And everybody is subject to delusion. That's why I say, if you're an atheist, don't think you're better than the religious people, because you may be nuts in some other way. And delusion is the body's, the brain's natural opiate. Well, what I have found in talking to members of the atheist community is that if they came from an environment where there was really no religious instruction, sometimes it was a cross religion, like a Jew marrying a non-Jew, we'll not raise the kids with any religion. Those people would tend to be atheists as early as like 8 or 9 years of age. Those who came from sort of traditional backgrounds, 12, 13, 14. Whereas if they came from religious backgrounds, late teens or 20s. So I think that indoctrination has a lot to do with it. I mean, you think that if you're living in small town America, the Bible Belt, there's 2 things I know about you. One is that you're going to be a football fan, because that's where you get together on Friday nights.
NASCAR racing track.
And then the second thing is you're going to believe in God because the church is the center of the social life.
That's right.
You go to church every Sunday, you meet your girlfriends, your boyfriends, you meet your family there, you go to church is the thing to do. So I think there are a lot of people who go to church and don't really believe in God.
Whether they believe or not, that's one thing, but they believe in the social aspects of it, and I think that's true everywhere.
And the sad thing is there are certain parts of this country where you can't even say that you don't believe because you might lose your job or your business might go out of work. Ostracism.
And that's
and you don't dare say that.
That's right.
So you just go with the flow.
So it does have an effect.
Yeah, that's brainwashing.
People down south will have, or the Bible Belt area will go through the same type of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's one of the reasons why I've asked you.
But I think that those people are the people that if you expose them to a different environment, they could lose their religion pretty quickly. Oh yeah, I was talking about craziness. The Amish, they got a real nuttiness. They don't like electricity. They got to think about electricity. Right. They don't mind gas, but electricity they don't like. Electricity is the most wonderful thing around. When we had the blackout in 2003, it was the first time. It was dark out, it was pitch dark, and I looked up for the first time. I saw a sky full of stars. And then we got out, and we were, one guy who was a musician, he was playing the drums, we were singing, we were talking. In fact, the cops came around to tell us to shut up. So we were having a meeting with all our neighbors, and there was one young lady, she was very friendly, and she was saying, oh, you know, this is kind of nice, getting to meet all your neighbors. I said, you seem like a very nice lady, but I prefer electricity. And here you have a group of people that shun electricity. Now, Hasidic are
well,
they're like,
they can't use lights. You know.
Well, yeah, that's the thing.
I made a lot of money when I was young.
You were the
quarters. I was the one. Yes,
you were the Shabbos goy. They call that.
Right. I know. So and I turn off the lights.
You know, now you think about that people actually sitting around. My father was amazed by this. They're thinking, you know, because you know, when the refrigerator opens, you open the door, the light goes on.
Yes.
So, well, this is very important before Shabbos. I got to unscrew the light bulb. This will make me a good person. And that's but actually, there's a sense behind, there's a method behind the madness. You see, when you become the thing about extreme religious Judaism is that it's very ceremonial. Everything is a ceremony. if you're an obsessive compulsive neurotic, you could be a religious Jew and no one will know that there's anything wrong with you. You had all of these things that physically that you do every day, wearing a certain kind of hat, dressing a certain way, the way you say your prayers. It's all part of it's a ritual and becomes part of you.
Right, the movement of your head.
Yeah, like I was talking once. I don't know how this came about, but I was chatting with a cab driver who was an Indian, and he told me that he was not religious. He was raised as a Hindu, but he was not religious. But the thought of putting meat in his mouth, it would be like
repulsive.
It was repulsive. It would be like going dog manure and putting that in my mouth. That was how turned off he was by it, because he's trained. And I think that people are trained to think that way. Mm-hmm. I don't question God. Of course there's God. Yeah. What do you mean there's no God? Well, think about it. No, I don't want to think about it. I've got something else. If somebody says to me, I believe in God because, because, then what will follow will be something completely idiotic.
Absolutely. Right.
Like, for example, if somebody says, well, if you don't believe in God, well, how can you explain? And then I'll say something like why the Earth goes around the sun, which we know Einstein's general theory of relativity explains it. But a good question is, how can you explain the fact that a whole mass of carbon-based molecules has a sense of itself? And the answer is, I don't know. You don't explain something you don't understand with something that's more fantastic. The thing, though, the thing is that there's a little problem I have with trying to tell people don't be religious, because there are people who need it.
Well, that's
and if they're not,
psychiatry.
Yeah, but if they're not really fanatic about it, they can be harmless. So I'm not so quick to tell people don't believe in God. I think what's important is to bring the atheists out of the shadows, and maybe take those people that are sort of come see, come saw, and warn people about the dangers of the religious people.
It's one of the reasons why we have a show on here.
Oh, is that it?
Yes, that's it.
Well,
what do you think of New York City Atheists as an organization?
I say it's a great organization.
You got something out. What do you?
Oh yeah, we have, for example, Thursdays. Last Thursday of the month, we have a meeting where there's an interesting speaker or lecture or something like that. Then
second Sunday
we also have it's a luncheon for only $20. You eat all you want, variety, and you get a lecture that's often very entertaining, very interesting.
Right.
It's a brunch. Mm-hmm. Then we have a book movie club on one of our Fridays, which is conducted by David Ornstein, who's a professor, and so on and so forth. And it's all based on a principle of rationalism. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like a prayer meeting without the prayer.
I want to thank you very much for coming here and voicing your opinions about the many things that you've had in your lifetime, and outside of your personal life, your opinions of life, generally speaking, from what you have observed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nice to have you with us.